welcome back to my channel. My name is Betsy, and today I'm going to teach you it's okay to take cuttings from your Hoyas. It's okay. I see a lot of misinformation about pruning Hoyas on the internet. Basically, people just saying, never prune your Hoyas, because Hoyas develop peduncles along the stems. Peduncles are where flowers will eventually come out, and Hoyas always flower from the same peduncles. They don't lose their peduncles, they keep them, and over time, each time they bloom, it will be from the same exact spot on the plant. So if you cut a stem that has a peduncle on it, you're removing that peduncle from the plant, and therefore that stem's ability to bloom in the future. Of course, that part is true, but there can be benefits to pruning your Hoyas too, so listen up. First of all, if people didn't prune their Hoyas, you wouldn't have one, because I guarantee that if you have a Hoya, it came from a cutting. Two, by pruning your Hoya, you can encourage the plant to put out growth lower near the base of the plant instead of putting all of its energy towards one long vine, just like this one is. So if I cut this vine off, then the plant is going to say, what happened? I could put out some more branches. And then it's going to put out some more branches, and then in the end, I have a fuller, more bushy looking plant, which is what we really like when it comes to our Hoyas. Plus, if you do cut off a peduncle, it's not like it's lost forever. You can share that cutting with a friend, and then they have a Hoya with a peduncle on it. That's a really nice gift. Or you can root it and you can put it in the same pot, keep your peduncle, and it'll just be in a different spot on the plant. By pruning, you create a fuller, bushier plant, and in the end, after time, all those different branches are going to develop more peduncles than your plant would have had if you had never pruned it in the first place. I mean, this plant isn't going to develop a crap ton of peduncles on one vine, but if I create a plant that has a bunch of vines and a bunch of different growth, it's going to create more flowers in the end. You just gotta be a little patient. Oh, let's get down to business. So, you see here I have a beautiful Hoya carnosa, and it's time for a repotting. You can see baby is quite root bound. It definitely needs to go up a pot, so we're going to work on upgrading this little guy to a new one, and I'm going to show you how to take cuttings, because this is a great example of a plant from which you can take cuttings. It's a fast grower. It's got these big old leaves, these big old vines. It's gonna be a great example. It's gonna be great. Sorry. You can see that it does have some new growth up at the base. It looks like this guy's had cuttings taken from him before. He has all sorts of spots he's growing out of here at the base. And then down here at the end, there's also a little bit of new growth. Focus, focus, focus on my plan. It's focused, okay. So it's looking pretty happy in general. It's a happy plant. I have it in an east-facing window, and it's done nothing but grow for me. So I have some soil here. My usual Hoya mix. It is just a tiny bit of peat moss and compost mixed with perlite and tree bark bits from orchid potting mix. And then it has some of these expanded clay aggregate pellets in here. That's not really intentional. It's just from when I was doing a bunch of experiments about perched water table. If you want to see that video, check it out. So now I have a bunch of these pebbles in here, and I'm basically too lazy to take them out. Make sure he fits in his pot. Happy little Hoya, that's what we want. He's not buried too deep. You can see the stem, but no roots. You don't want to bury your Hoyas too deep. It's no good. When all is said and done, I'm going to put some water in that pot. You should always water a plant just after potting. You're just supposed to, okay? It'll help the soil settle in and other stuff. So when it comes to taking cuttings, you have to keep two things in mind. the size of the plant and the age of the cutting itself. So you're going to get the best results with the 2-node cutting, and I'll show you what that means. The place where leaves are growing, this is called a node. So you're going to have the most success if your entire cutting has 2 nodes in it. With a large leaf plant like this, you're probably going to do okay taking just a single node cutting. People have had success with that. The chances are a little lower, but if the plant, the Hoya, is of this size, and it's a carnosa, which is a really great grower, it's very, very easy to grow this plant, and it's just prolific, you could probably do fine with a 1-node cutting. But with something a little smaller, like Hoya memoria, for example, the best type of cutting that you're going to get from this is a 2-node cutting rather than a 1-node cutting. Here, I have a 1-node cutting, and I'm hoping and praying that it's going to do okay. And the same over here. It does feel like they have rooted, so I'm pretty happy about that. Another good example would be Hoya linearis. I've just rooted this one, all of these little cuttings in water, and I potted it up this morning. With this plant, you would definitely want to take a 2-node cutting. These lose leaves very easily, and it would just be best to make sure that any cutting has at least 1, 2, or 3 nodes. The other thing to keep in mind is the age of the cutting itself, not the plant, but the cutting. So here, at the tip of my plant, I do have some really healthy, good-looking growth. I even have some new leaves coming in. So I could probably cut this here and do a 1-node cutting, and it would do okay. But in a plant with very young and undeveloped growth at the end, you wouldn't want to take a cutting there. It has a higher likelihood of withering away and dying and rotting. It just doesn't have the power it needs to really put out roots. It's just less likely to survive. My example of that would be this Hoya bertonia. This is a really young plant, as you can see. I just got it as a cutting this year. At the very end, it has really young growth. It has this tiny leaf and this tiny leaf. I would never take a cutting here. This has very little likelihood of surviving. I would need to wait till the plant really matures, and these leaves are looking more like these healthy developed leaves that are a lot bigger. So I have a wonderful plant here, but it is putting most of its energy in growing this one single vine out. And that's great and everything. It's cool, it's pretty. But what I want to obtain is a bushier plant. I want this pot to be like, pooh, with all some leaves over there, some leaves over there, and some vines here and there. I want a fuller looking plant, and I can achieve that by taking cuttings. This plant is quite young. It has not produced any peduncles yet, so that's not really a concern for me at this time. But if it did have peduncles, I still wouldn't frickin' care, because actually I'm going to take these cuttings and I'm going to root them, and then eventually I will put them in this pot with this Hoya to create a bushier plant. So whether or not it has peduncles or anything, they're just going to be rearranged and put into the same plant in this case. If I cut this stem, then it's basically going to redirect its energy towards growth lower down on the plant. So it's going to start putting more energy and effort into developing these stems that it's creating down here. 1, 2, 3, I think there are 4 down here. And I really want the plant to put more effort into that because it's going to create more branches and therefore a fuller looking plant. Taking the cuttings here, let's do it. Let's do the big business, okay? Let's say you wanted to take a 2-node cutting. A 1-node? A 2-node? That means you would cut here, just a few centimeters below the bottommost node. Then you would put this in soil, or in my case, water. I plan to root these in water because I have a lot of success with that, and I like to be able to keep an eye on how they're doing root-wise. I just stick them in the soil. It's kind of a, you know, there's an element of mystery. I don't know what things, you know, I don't know if it's rooting well, and you gotta tug on it. I don't like to tug on it. It's stressful for the, you know. So I'm gonna root these in water. That's what I'm gonna do. Don't ask questions. Because this is a really happy, healthy, and well-developed carnosa, I'm gonna take a 1-node cutting. So I'm gonna go a couple of inches below the node and snip. So what I'm gonna do is put this puppy in some water. Well, with a 1-node stem like this, you might have a little bit of difficulty. Oh, that's okay. That's fine. Sometimes it like tumbles out because the leaves are really heavy. In that case, I just put like a layer of tint. I'll show you. And that just ensures that the cutting is held upright and that the stem is in water, and that will develop roots. Okay, so I'm gonna take my second cutting. Again, I'm gonna do a 1-node cutting. I'm gonna do the same thing. Find the node, go a couple centimeters down, chippy chop. Here I have this. Now, just so you know, any growth that comes out of this plant after it roots is not gonna come out of this stem, right? So you can just cut that off. Any growth is gonna come out of the node here. So you don't need that bit. In fact, it's probably gonna turn brown and eventually fall off. So there I have my second single node cutting. And I'm gonna put that in water. I think that's good for my carnosa. I don't really want to take any more cuttings from this. I do like having the little vine here. I am going to cut this off though because, like I said, it's unnecessary, and any growth that does come from this stem is going to come from this node, or, you know, any node. Like, for example, this node here is putting out some new leaves. So growth is always going to come from the node. You can just chop off that extra stem. And there you go. Now you know how to take single or double node cuttings from your Hoya. And now you know that it's really not that big of a deal. Your plant is just going to put out new growth down lower on the plant. It's actually going to encourage the plant to become bushier and put out more vines from lower places on the plant, rather than putting all of its energy into one single vine. Then I'm going to root these in water. It'll probably take about two weeks. I don't know, sometimes it only takes 1 week. These things are like unstoppable. And then I'm going to plant them in this pot. I mean, I could plant them in there right now. They'll probably root, everything will be fine. But like I said, it's just a personal thing. I like to keep an eye on the rooting process and to see how they're doing along the way, and to just have reassurance of some sort that they're definitely developing roots. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was interesting and that you learned something. And I hope that you can go forth and no longer be afraid to prune your Hoyas. If you have any comments or questions, just leave it down below and I will get back to you. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see other videos about houseplant love and care, sciencey stuff, DIY projects, and all sorts of business regarding houseplants, subscribe to my channel. I put out 1 video every week, sometimes more, just depends. Depends on how busy I am. Thank you again. I really appreciate your watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.